Hi, everyone. My name is Rick Steinberg, and I am Executive in Residence and Leadership for the UB School of Management, working primarily with the Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness, or CLOE. First, I'd like to thank Geico, who has been our wonderful sponsor for this series. And next, I am thrilled to introduce this week's speaker for our 52 Weeks of Leadership series, Scott Friedman, who is a partner at the law firm of Lippis, Mathias, Wexler, Friedman, where for the past 30 years, he served as managing partner or the firm's chairman. He currently co-leads the firm's startup and venture capital practice team. To support that practice and provide the firm's clients with a full suite of services, he co-founded and serves as a managing partner of Varia Ventures, a digital venture capital and business consulting platform. Scott is also a general partner in Impact Capital, a venture capital fund focused on upstate New York, an advisor to numerous founders, early stage companies, and investors, the author of 7 books and over 100 published articles. He's also a regular speaker across the United States on a variety of business topics. Again, it's a real pleasure to introduce Scott Friedman. Scott?
Rick, thank you. Thank you. Thank Molly Anderson, Caitlin, Jim Lemoyne, all of your colleagues at the University at Buffalo, and particularly the Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness. It's a pleasure, it's an honor to have a chance to share with you some of my thoughts on leadership today. I'll begin by saying that years ago, someone advised me that text without context is pretext. So I thought that the most useful way to share some thoughts on leadership today is to share some context that really goes back about 35 years, if not longer. So I'm going to go quickly, but I hope you find the presentation interesting, meaningful, and useful. So let's get going. So the title of my presentation is The World is Complex, Thoughts for Living and Working in the 21st Century. I'll just start with a little disclaimer. Everyone's life is different, everyone's journey is different. I really thought Dolly Parton nailed it. I think the best we can do for each other is share perspectives and information, and that's what I hope to do, and hope that pieces of today's presentation resonate with all of you. As Rick mentioned, I'm a lawyer, I'm an investor, I have written. I also think of myself as a member of our community, as a son, a father, brother, grandfather, friend. And so my view on the subject of today's presentation is informed by all those various perspectives, but perhaps as more than anything, I think life is complicated, and I continue to try to learn as much as I can to provide the most helpful advice as I can. So more than anything, probably like all of you, continuing my education and a continuous learner. So in my early years, particularly right after law school, I thought that life comes down as a lawyer to giving legal advice, whether it's as a corporate lawyer, buy-sell agreements, shareholder agreements, estate planning, to make sure assets are transferred efficiently. And of course, all that's important, but I also found that practicing law and working with my clients was a bit more complicated than crystal clear algorithmic like solutions to our clients' problems. And the world began to seem a bit more complicated to me as I started practicing law, and I'd meet with clients and nothing was ever black and white. Things were typically in shades of gray, if even that. I do have a couple of polling questions as we get going. I want to go super quickly because I have a lot to share, but I thought it would be interesting if we just take 45 seconds, and Jim Lemoyne, if you can put these up. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how much do you enjoy your work? Next question, Jim.
I think everybody should be able to see all 4 questions now.
Oh, okay, great. I just can't. So thank you. That's great. Can we keep going, Jim? Okay. We'll find your responses interesting, and we may come back to it later, but thank you for that.
You should be able to see the responses now.
Mm-hmm. How much do you enjoy work? A lot of you like work. No one seems particularly unhappy. Relationships, super important. That's not surprising. Compensation, also important, but as the research suggests, not the most important factor in quality of work. And how optimized do you think your business is for success? Not a lot of, it looks like most of you think you can do better at work. That's interesting too. Again, not surprising, and I suppose in part why you're all here today. Let's see. So as I continued to learn and study, I began to appreciate that life was a bit more complicated, and that there were intersections beyond the advice that we taught in law school. And I began to branch out, and I found myself focused around family businesses. There are a lot of businesses in this country, and certainly here in Western New York, are family owned. Sort of typically, historically, there was a murkiness between one's roles and relationships as part of a family, part of the ownership interests, and part of the business. Back in the 1970s, professors from Harvard began to help people appreciate that there were overlapping roles and creating a bit more structure around what roles and responsibilities people have as members of a family and as part of a business and part of an ownership circle. So I wrote a book that began to describe some of the sort of planning strategies that the sort of traditional family business consultants were using in their work. I was invited to speak on that book at Canyon Ranch. The invitation came from a leading psychologist and best-selling author, Dan Baker, who was on the forefront of applying positive psychology to his work with patients at Canyon Ranch. And Dan, in sort of one of those light bulb turning on moments for me, introduced me to the science of happiness, positive psychology, how people and organizations flourish or languish. And what I began to appreciate was that as professional advisors, we often focus on the technical planning like shareholder agreements and trusts and wills, but we don't always appreciate our evolutionary heritage and the importance of our culture. So I began to focus on things like evolutionary psychology, how our behavior can be explained through natural selection. And in turn, there are quite a number of really super interesting best-selling books out now that describe scientifically how evolution has left our minds susceptible to making systematic errors in how we think. And as Dan Baker wrote, that same evolutionary heritage has left us hardwired to react in sort of fight or flight mode, and be a bit more emotional than rational in our day-to-day thinking. So while we're not typically faced with existential fears in today's world, not thankfully most of us, we do continue to react often in sort of historic fight or flight mode. Whether we think we're losing status, we are afraid that we're being undercompensated, we fear that someone's being overcompensated, and as we might continue to age and younger generations come into business and organizations, it's not unusual for people to fear a loss of stature and power. The fear-based behavior in turn creates negative cultures, and researchers across the country and around the world have been spending the past few decades focusing on the correlation of culture and the bottom line. And it turns out there's a very direct correlation. Workers in a negative culture take out their frustrations on coworkers, on customers. They're less committed, they're less productive. As a bottom line, productivity suffers. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year is estimated cost of negative culture. Positive psychology is the scientific study of how people and organizations can flourish. It's a belief that as psychology had traditionally focused on, life is not simply going from a state of negativity to neutral. We can go past neutral and really learn to live our best lives, thrive, flourish, and live good lives. I should emphasize that happiness is not being blind to negatives, but it's ensuring that we spend enough time focusing on our possibilities, not just our problems. It's not ducking our heads into the sand. So as research have focused on the bottom line impact of a negative culture, other researchers have focused on the bottom line impact of a positive culture. This is one of my favorite books, former professor at Harvard Business School, who now consults with leading companies around the world. Some of the benefits of working in a business where there is a positive workplace culture. It provides more creativity, productivity, and the bottom line in turn benefits as well. And it's no longer pop psychology. This is real science. And one of my favorite journal articles was the one in the middle here, when Harvard Business Review, one of the leading business publications, put this sort of iconic yellow smiley face on its front cover. And I imagine that if anyone were to walk into a bookstore today, you'd see a lot of books on happiness and for individuals, but as well as for business. So the title for today's presentation, as I was thinking about it, is, I have to say, informed by Thomas Friedman's book, best-selling book back in 2005, that talked about how the digitization of our world and our economy was bringing everything closer together. I'm sure have all experienced Zoom calls in the past couple of years in particular, but as well, we're able to connect with people around the world, and they might as well be around the corner. So the world has flattened, but at the same time, technology continues to accelerate. And with the acceleration of technology, the world has become increasingly complicated. And the rate of change is not slowing down. If anything, is continuing to speed up. And so the world is no longer, in my view, simple. It's no longer even complicated. It's complex. It has features that may operate in patterned ways, but the interactions between those features are always changing. Or as Professor Taleb observed, complex systems are full of interdependencies. They're hard to detect, and they have nonlinear responses. So thinking back to the professors at Harvard with their three-circle model from the 1970s, I found myself thinking that we all benefit individually and as colleagues, as friends, as family members in business, thinking about different three circles: personal, business, and our relationships. So take a few quick moments on how to nurture our own minds and bodies. Healthy lifestyle. Without our health, there can be no wealth. Appreciation, gratitude's the greatest virtue of all. There's so much to be thankful for. I'm going to keep going, Jim, but I would ask the audience to think about how much time they spend thinking about how much you have versus how much you don't have. Patience, more than ever, we need to recognize the importance of patience and the importance of giving things the time they take to develop. Passion, love this quotation from Sam Walton: if you love your work, you'll be out there every day. It's like the football players who often we hear quoted on TV, can't believe I'm getting paid to play the sport that I love. I think the same can be said for business if you find something that you really love doing every day. And then again, in terms of nurturing our own minds and bodies, maintaining as we age a sense of youthful curiosity. So on the personal front, pulling it all together, I had the opportunity to co-author this book on happiness with Bob Rich. It was a lot of fun. It gave us a chance to pull together some of our experience in business, philosophy, and experience. And I won't share too much here, but a spoiler alert, the slides that I just quickly ran through provide for us our secret code to happiness that we wrote about in that book, Secrets from the Delphi Cafe. The importance of maintaining a healthy lifestyle, being appreciative, grateful, being passionate, being patient, and maintaining a sense of youthful curiosity. Relationships. No man is an island to him or herself. Our one-on-one bonds are the most important critical factor in our health. Interesting new science that continues to develop at schools like Stanford that have centers on forgiveness and compassion. The University of Pennsylvania was kind of the epicenter of positive psychology. They focus on grittiness, resilience, self-control, happiness. Berkeley also focusing on communication, culture, creativity, and the University of Buffalo, of course, ongoing research and courses. And all this research is being translated into not just peer-reviewed scientific journals, but now best-selling books. This is just a great book that was recently recommended to me. I finished it over the weekend. There is scientific data about the correlation between the quality of our relationships, kindness, and living longer and happier. Thoughts on business? There are lots of models around what it takes to be successful in business, thinking about the stakeholders, the customers that are out there, how the world changes, the solutions that are out there. I do think, as I've reflected on the intersection of life, our personal happiness and well-being, the relationships that we have and maintain and need and want to nurture in business, I think that the slide can be, in my mind, improved upon if we think about with clarity our core values, our vision, our plans, our policies. We talk and share about those values, make sure there's full alignment, and make decisions consistently with our core principles. Years ago, I found myself thinking that we spend too much time thinking and working around sort of the financial PE ratio, price to earnings ratio that often drives valuations of stock prices. And I thought that a no less important ratio, another PE ratio, was the ratio of our principled actions and decisions to expedient actions and decisions, with the goal being to focus our efforts and behave consistently in the numerator of that ratio, or what I sometimes refer to as PE max. You'll also note the importance of constructive conversations and appreciative inquiry on this slide. And this goes back to the importance of not ignoring problems in the workplace or in life, but trying to approach them in a constructive, positive, helpful way. Again, it's not ducking one's head in the sand, but making sure that possibilities are explored, not just problems. And when problems are explored, they're explored with the right framework and perspective. And there's a lot of super interesting literature on appreciative inquiry that I encourage everyone to read as well. In fact, to that point, I'm going so quickly that maybe the most helpful thing I could say is that all of these topics have been well researched and written on, and if any of them resonate with you, I'd encourage you to look for more information. All super interesting. I do have one more polling question, Jim. Why don't we put this up for the audience? Do you make decisions based on your core principles? I have found over time that a lot of people aren't even sure what their core principles are. They sometimes personally, they haven't stopped to think about what they value most. And sometimes in business organizations, businesses might have statements of core values, but over the years, I've found myself thinking, you know, which businesses put their core principles and values on a website or in the office lobby, and which ones actually look to their core principles, their values, their vision, their mission statements, and make decisions consistently with those. That's interesting. Not surprising that a group that would show up for a presentation like this is maybe a bit more thoughtful than typical. So I think that that's great. That's very interesting. Thank you. And let's see. So what have I learned? I've learned that success is complicated. In fact, I don't even know that success, frankly, is the right word here. I think there's so many factors outside of our control that the most we might be able to hope for is to be as effective as possible, maximally effective. And sometimes as I've thought about effectiveness, I've thought about being super clear and then being committed. And when I think about being clear, I think it's, and frankly committed, I think it has helped me and the clients I work with, and I hope all of you, to think about what can you do to nurture your minds and your body? What can you do to nurture your relationships? And what can you do to integrate thoughtful business planning informed by science, informed by culture, the significance of positive culture, and continuing to build your relationships around business around that. So I'm sure I'll continue learning, but I do believe that by studying what's worked in the past, it helps us prepare for a future that has always been and will continue to be unforeseeable and perhaps more than ever unpredictable. So thank you. I think I managed to squeeze in 54 slides in about 25 minutes because I wanted to be careful to time, and if there were questions, have a few minutes for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Let me, there is a question that's come up, and I have one as well. And the first question is from Michael. His question is, what are your thoughts on systems thinking? It has been gaining traction in business as a way of dealing with complex problems and a complex environment.
I love it. I mean, I totally agree. I think that I'm not sure I know exactly from the question what systems are being thought about and how they're being implemented and executed. But I would say that the essence of my presentation today is that there are systems that collide imperfectly in unpredictable ways. And the more we can get out of our intellectual silos, our professional silos, and have wide-ranging interests and experience and ongoing education, and think about how the range of factors in every one of the systems intersects with the other systems, I think we'll be better equipped to deal with life and the issues that are thrown at us.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Scott, question from me is, Michael thanks you, by the way. Question for me is, would your presentation have been any different pre-pandemic than it was today?
That's a great question. Yes, in certain pieces, because every week it seems like there are new books that are coming out. The book on kindness, I think, is a new book in 2021. And it's the insights from a book like that are not particularly surprising, but it's interesting to think about. But no, I would say, well, it's a good question. Relationships are hard. They take work, and the social isolation that the pandemic has created, including, frankly, around even wearing masks. And I'll just say, I don't confuse the point, I wear a mask and I'm vaccinated and I support all of that. But to the point, there have been studies at places like Yale on the importance of smiling. If people who smile are more likely to get a job, they're more likely to be employed, they're more likely to negotiate a contract successfully. So our facial features do make a difference. And I think, as we've been forced to spend more time apart from each other, forced to have more meetings virtually by Zoom, depending on your preference, forced or choosing to wear a mask, all of those things make our ability to connect, as we are evolutionarily hardwired to do, more challenging. So whether it's connecting with parents or children or siblings or friends or colleagues in business, it takes more work. And I think maybe as I'm talking, Rick, I feel like the pandemic has made the importance of taking the effort that's required more seriously, because nothing's more important.
Thank you. Great answer. Appreciate that. I want to thank you so much. Scott, really enjoyed your presentation. I want to thank everyone for attending and remind you that next week we will have Dr. Diana Sahaki, who will be talking about visualization as a critical leadership skill. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.